And Trevor, how's it going this morning?
It's going well. We're I feel like we're in the summer planning phase right now of getting ready to launch a bunch of registrations for digital camps. Uh, so that's kind of fun, and I think we're gonna coming our post-COVID plan is to take it a little bit easy this summer and give everyone some time to recharge their batteries because our fall is already looking pretty crazy schedule wise. So it's good to be at that point, right, where you can forecast beyond tomorrow, where it's not like wake up and just do everything you could possibly do to get programs going and get people connected. Now we're kind of moving more into a maintenance and growth phase. So
Oh, that's so cool. We want to be in that point. I feel like over the last year, it's just kind of like, well, whatever you can do, just
yeah,
get there.
yeah, yeah. That was, I mean, it was the same for us. It's just like, keep the brand awareness out there and do as much as you can about it being a durable resource.
Hmm. All right. Hey, Molly.
Oh, howdy.
Quick question. Does anybody know about the change in the going live on Facebook? Like it won't let me log on from the A to Jobs page. Trevor, Jessica, anyone have any ideas?
Um, you know what? I will defer to Jason from our end if he's jumping on, or Chris. Hey, Chris, can you help Dia with the Facebook streaming from Zoom? Have you done it yet?
And they seem to have changed the whole model, which if it's okay, I can just stream on my Facebook and share it on the A to Jobs page later, so we don't spend any.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
I remember it being when we did it, there were some hiccups that we had to work around at the time too, but I can't recall what those were at the moment.
Okay, no worries. Zoom could probably give us a heads up next time, but we are live on Facebook. And good morning, everyone. My name is Dia Ghosh with the Ada Jobs Foundation. And I see a few new faces, so please put in your name and the organization you're with if you're a new person on the call. But I appreciate you all joining us for the main meetup of the Community Entrepreneurship Hour. And as you have probably seen from the marketing and our flyers, we have a special edition this month. Instead of featuring two entrepreneurs, we have our friends from the Rural Innovation Network at the Black River campus based in, excuse me, Springfield, joining us to talk a little bit about their program and how they've built their ecosystem. And then towards the later half, we have a startup. Cara Tyrrell is the founder of Core for Parenting, and she will be pitching her business, and she is part of the Actuator accelerator from the Black River Innovation. And then to kick us all off, we have Molly Pyle with the Center on Rural Innovation. Molly is the Entrepreneurial Ecosystem Development Lead, and she will tell us a little bit more about the Rural Innovation Network and what that means. So Molly, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it. And I will go ahead and make you a co-host so you can share your screen.
Great. Thank you so much, Dia. And it is a pleasure to be here with all of you today. Absolutely love Ada. Not had the pleasure of visiting yet, but I feel that I know Ada well, and I'm a huge fan of the community and what y'all are working on. And just want to chat with you all today a little bit more about the Center on Rural Innovation and what we do, and particularly the Rural Innovation Network, and give a little context to Springfield, Vermont, who's joining us as a peer community with Ada. So first, just again, I'm Molly Pyle. I'm the Entrepreneurial Ecosystem Development Lead at the Center on Rural Innovation, also known as CORI. CORI is an action tank focused on advancing inclusive rural prosperity through the creation of inclusive digital economy ecosystems that power rural Americans to create tech jobs and launch scalable tech startups. And we were founded in 2017 and have been really deeply focused on minimizing what is currently the largest rural opportunity gap in the history of our country. And the drivers of this very persistent and growing gap stem from automation of rural jobs, globalization and this 30-year decline of entrepreneurship, which is also why Corey is really committed on creating these sort of inclusive ownership of production in the age of automation mechanisms. So what that means is ultimately helping folks in rural communities become tech entrepreneurs. This is critical to economic development from our perspective. And just a quick glimpse of what I mean when I say digital economy ecosystem, it's really about what we're hoping to achieve in terms of outcomes for all of the rural communities that we work with. So local wealth creation by startups and quality digital employment by creating these sort of high-paying tech jobs. And this is our model for how communities can reach these outcomes. We support them in building a strategy around what we call these direct drivers of a digital economy. And that's scalable tech entrepreneur support and incubation, access to capital for those entrepreneurs, access to digital jobs, inclusive tech culture building, and digital workforce development and support. And through what we call the Rural Innovation Initiative, we provide this intensive support to rural communities as they develop their strategies for really building out their digital economy ecosystems and also applying for competitive grants. So we actually met the team from the Ada Jobs Foundation in 2019 at the Rural Rise Summit, and their vision of truly what could be possible in Ada and how you all could create this sort of thriving digital economy here is one of the reasons why they were selected to join only 5 communities across the country to work with us in our Rural Innovation Initiative cohort, developing a strategy last year. And then we continued our work with them this year as they became members of the Rural Innovation Network, or RIN, and really continue to craft and sort of implement this vision for what Ada can become with more tech entrepreneurs, more digital jobs, and this culture of really inclusive innovation. So the community joining us here today, Springfield, Vermont, was actually the very first community that the Center on Rural Innovation ever worked with in our Rural Innovation Initiative. So we've kind of got worlds colliding in a really amazing way today. And like I mentioned, once communities complete the Rural Innovation Initiative, they're invited to join us in this Rural Innovation Network that we call it. And that is a supported nationwide community of committed change agents working to advance the economic future of their hometowns. So Ada and Springfield are members of the Rural Innovation Network, and they're offered really continuous support and ongoing guidance from us as they really develop their programs and resources that help bring their digital economies to life. And we know that it does take a lot of resources for digital economies to start and to thrive in rural communities. And that's why a big focus of our work is providing that kind of support for communities to apply for federal grant funding. Ada actually just finished our most recent cohort program where we worked with them to build an application for the Economic Development Administration's Build to Scale program. And Springfield, who you'll hear from in just a moment, actually won the Build to Scale grant and was the only rural community in that year to do so. So kind of a fun backstory, that's how we really got to do this work, is that the EDA suggested, hey, what you did with Springfield was actually kind of amazing. Can you do that with more rural communities, after seeing how competitive their grant was, their application? So really, that brings us to now where we can continue to support communities and developing these very competitive proposals for what kind of digital economy and innovation ecosystem they can build, creating tech startups in the rural communities, winning this funding, helping them actually do that. That's our goal. And part of what that kind of funding makes possible is the creation of these sort of innovation hubs, or these physical places where lots of the digital economy assets can all be centralized under one roof. And Springfield, Vermont, you'll hear about it. They actually have the Black River Innovation Campus, the sort of living, breathing version of this sort of innovation hub model. And I know that Ada is on its way to building their own kind of innovation hub. So staying tuned and excited for those seeds being planted and watered. And like I mentioned, Springfield and Ada are just 2 of 20 communities that are actively working with us, Corey, and our Rural Innovation Network to build and scale innovation hubs, like I just showed you, and their digital economies locally. So this map really shows all of the Rural Innovation Network communities and just a bit about the size and scope of what they're capable of doing. So an event like this, like I mentioned, is actually really exciting because we can connect 2 very different, but also in many ways very similar communities Ada, Oklahoma and Springfield, Vermont, a little far on the map, but both, holding this really inspiring vision of what is possible in their rural community, that tech entrepreneurship and startup activation actually is possible in these places. It's not a myth. It's not a crazy dream. It's a reality. So with the Rural Innovation Network, what we've done is create this sort of national community of innovation hubs, people like the Ada Jobs Foundation and our friends at BRIC, who I'm about to introduce. And it's a platform as well for them to really learn from each other, accelerate and amplify their work on the ground with events like this, and also have access to knowledge, resources, partnerships, and connections. So local leaders like Dia and Jim, and also Trevor and Chris from the Black River Innovation Campus, they're folks I feel very lucky to have the privilege of working with every day. Really, they're the ones rolling up their sleeves and bringing this sort of vision to life. So I thought that what better way to really explain a little bit further about the Rural Innovation Network and what some of our peer communities and member communities get and look like than to hear it best from them. So with that, very excited to pass the baton over to Trevor and Chris from the Black River Innovation Campus, who can tell you a little bit more about that. And then also, because like I said, they're at this point where they have really developed their innovation hub. They launched their first accelerator program after some brainstorming and designing that together. And now their accelerator is coming to this culmination ending point where they have an incredible entrepreneur in ed tech who's joined us today, Cara, who's going to tell you a little bit about her startup. So you can get this story of how these innovation ecosystems are like startups themselves. They start with inspiring founders with a dream. They turn into something real. They grow, they get support, they get amplified over time. And then here we are now hearing the stories. So really excited to be here and to share more. And I'll be around for a bit if any of y'all have questions about Rural Innovation Network or Corey or more details on how we've worked with Ada and how we will continue to work with Ada in Springfield for as long as they're building these digital economy ecosystems. So with that, thanks, Trevor and Chris. I will stop sharing so I can send it over to you.
Right on. Thanks, Molly. And thanks to Dia and Jim for inviting us to be able to present to your group today. It's the part that, as we know, during a COVID reality, that is really important for all of us to connect, not just within our communities, but across the country through our innovation network, because this is hard work. It's not easy building things that haven't existed previously, and it's through the support of the greater communities, both outside your geography as well as within your geography, that these things actually come to fruition. So I've got a short deck that I will share, and then I think we're going to go into a Q&A where Chris and I will be available, as well as Molly, to answer any questions. So give me one sec while I get that. Fired up. Oh, and let me see. Oh, let me go back. Is everyone seeing that? Get the quick thumbs up. Okay. So the Black River Innovation Campus is located in Springfield, Vermont. I put the founded in 2019 here because that's when in earnest the monies from the I-6 grant, which is now the Build to Scale, which is through the EDA, so what Molly had mentioned, was closed on and allowed us to kind of put an operational plan into place. But that being said, the organization really struggled for about a year or so finding someone to run the program and get it off the ground. Because even though you can get money to do these things and tell a great narrative, like Molly alluded to earlier, ultimately it's about people, right? And people coming together and actually executing on the plan. So here are the people that got together to execute on the initial plan to make this a reality. So the usual acronym soup here. So we have the Springfield Regional Development Corporation, which is economic development entity for the what we call Windsor County region, or Southern Windsor County. Corey, which is Center on Rural Innovation, which Molly's here representing today. we also have the SSD RVTC VTVLC, which is unique to Springfield in that we have 3 school districts within a very small community. So we have our traditional academic school district, our technical center, as well as we are the Center for Virtual Learning. So there's a unique virtual learning cooperative in the state of Vermont that is actually the hub is in Springfield. It obviously takes the local infrastructure through the town of Springfield. We've got a pretty amazing board of directors that's made up of a diverse group of people from what we call the Upper Valley, which is about a half an hour away, which is essentially the Dartmouth ecosystem. So we're talking about some nice Ivy League ties for us, which is helpful. VTEL. So VTEL is our local telephone company without whom none of this happens. Literally, they had the vision 8 years ago to get some federal funding to build out a 10 gigabit fiber network all throughout our region, as well as with direct connections to New York, Boston, and Montreal. So we literally, from our campus, have some of the fastest internet in the world with direct connections globally. And guess what? Nothing was being done with it for a very long time until this initiative came together. And then, of course, I mentioned Dartmouth. So we have a relationship with many of the schools at Dartmouth, especially they have a Magnuson Center for Entrepreneurship. So that's been nice as far as having academic support. And then the state of Vermont itself. So with our current governor and the legislature, as well as our congressional delegation, we're one of the top projects in the state when it comes to economic development and revitalization. So our mission, it's pretty simple. It's building a tech community, right? So we've got this amazing broadband capacity in Springfield, but no one really using it. I mean, other than, I think you could probably poll the community prior to BRIC and ask what the use case would be for most people. And it's like, well, I send email and maybe I watch a couple videos and maybe I do a little gaming. So there was total underuse of the actual capacity. And so one of our goals when we came in was to highlight the fact that we have this amazing asset through this partnership with VTEL on which you can do almost anything. And so the reason why I feel like I'm small authority on these types of subjects is because I've spent the past 20 plus years of my career building technology startup companies, supporting technology startup companies all around the country and globally, in which bandwidth was kind of a premium asset. And it's something that, I look back even 5 years ago being where I was, had just left the Denver Boulder area, which is now considered one of the top tech global hubs. And even out there, getting this type of internet capacity was next to impossible at the time. And here I am, and I come back to Vermont, and I come back to the community I grew up in, and also like, hey, there's 10 gigabit internet here. Like, oh my goodness, how come no one's doing anything with this? So, so that's kind of how everything came together with the BRIC story. In my involvement, as I came and got together with some of the leaders that originally put together the narrative to spin up the funding, and I said, how can I help and get involved? And it just so happens that they were ready to have someone slide in and be an executive director, so I jumped on board for that. So once again, talking about the funding and our resources and why this ended up becoming a pretty unique project. And as Molly said, I think ultimately has become a catalyst for Corey being able to create the Rural Innovation Network. Is these are all the funders that got involved at the beginning and who we've been awarded money from. So you've got the EDA with the I-6 grant. We have Vermont Community Foundation, which is one of the significant benefactors in the state of Vermont when it comes to supporting social impact projects. We won an Entrepreneurship and Innovation Award from the SBA as well. The Ewan Marion Kaufman Foundation, so the Kaufman Foundation, which you might be more familiar with because they're headquartered at Kansas City, they had never done an investment like this before in this type of project. And in fact, we just submitted some of our final reporting to them, and they're like, wow, this is pretty amazing that you're actually doing this and making this happen in somewhere that we would have completely overlooked previously. And so we're hoping to continue our relationship there. We also had a nice connection with Reid Hoffman of PayPal and LinkedIn fame. So as well as being one of the major venture capitalists out there, well, actually now private equity, because we're dealing with billions, not just millions now, who has been hugely supportive of it. Best Buy Foundation, a lot of private donors got excited as well. So this was kind of our matching capital stack that you usually need for federal funds that helped to really enable this story and give us ultimately what is 3 years of runway with the program. So I'm going to talk about a little things, and then we'll go into some of the challenges with regards to the actual story. But because it is the Black River Innovation Campus, and I think Molly's visual slide that she had showing, what is it that creates an innovation community and campus, especially with regards to tech. So we have this amazing 140-year-old building, like just gorgeous architecture that was going to be abandoned because the school district could no longer maintain it. And so we came together with a plan to turn it into our innovation campus and are still in the iterative process of cleaning it up and renovating it, because ultimately it's around a $25 million project. But the who would have thunk for myself, fact about this building is, one, I went to school here when I was in 4th and 5th grade. And 2, I learned how to code here. So this is talking late 70s, we'll say, to date myself. Late 70s, early 80s, I learned to program in COBOL and Fortran as part of an IBM pilot program. So that speaks to what our community of Springfield used to be. It used to be a technology and innovation hub, and then it went into kind of a 30-year decline where nothing really happened. And the fact that we're doing, it's a pretty beautiful story that's a privilege to be a part of, to think that I'm literally working out of a classroom that I learned to code in, many, many years ago. And now we're building a next generation economic driver for this community in that very building. So to take a peek at what our current plans are, you can see we just put up some nice shiny signage to declare that this is the Black River Innovation Campus. We have about 100,000 square feet of space in our building. It's mixed live-work, so we'll be putting in 24 living units that are dedicated to entrepreneurship and our programming. So that's so we can attract entrepreneurs and digital skilled workers from outside, as well as people attending events. So that gives us capacity for the live work. You can see in the lower corner of this, these are the specs for what the building will look like. So it'll be a modern tech campus. I mean, right now we have, by the end of this summer, we'll have probably around 8,000 square feet that we'll be using on one floor of the building. But in addition, in the building, and I believe I've got some other pictures here, you can see we'll be spinning up auditorium space. Some of these images are the modernization of the building, but the building actually looks like this already, believe it or not. We have marble floors, we have intricate woodwork, like all these amazing things that were put into place when Springfield used to be one of the wealthiest communities in the state of Vermont, let alone New England, because we were the hub of the gear shaping and manufacturing industry globally. So literally anything that took gearing in the world, so automobiles, military industrial complex, all the things in the early 1900s through the 50s, 60s, and 70s, that machining, or the machines that enabled that gearing, were made in Springfield. So it was literally a pretty amazing hub of innovation and industrial might. So moving forward, you can still see the space. This is, how the space is existing today. So we have purpose-built space where we have lounge area, we have co-work area, we have event space, we have this incredible 500-seat auditorium, we have a pit gymnasium that slowly but surely we were starting to use, and then COVID hit, and obviously we took a bit of a hiatus over the past 14 months, but last week was the first time that we did a reopening and brought around 40 people back into the space to enjoy it and start featuring the different things that you can do here. Because while we had our COVID downtime, which was definitely not downtime for us, we continued to build out the capacity of the facility and add new features for the community to use once they re-enter into our campus model. So this is probably not the most up-to-date number, but we have been trending around 200 members in our digital community, which is pretty significant when you think about the town of Springfield really only being around a population of 5,000 to 6,000 in its core area. And then you probably have somewhere between 25,000 to 50,000 as you get up to a half an hour away. So having 200 members for an organization that really has only had 4 months of physical in-person capacity, and then we'll call it 14 months of virtual capacity due to COVID, is something we're really proud of. And it's a number that's continuing to grow. Even with just doing this event last week, we're seeing a lot of people who are interested in coming back in and new people we didn't know about. So we also have 10 companies that are working out of our campus. So those are companies that either are in our Actuator program or companies that are in our peripheral network that have come and are using our space and our facilities as their headquarters. So that's pretty exciting. I'm hoping that by the end of the year, we can triple that number. So we have the capacity, we have the space, and it feels like we have the momentum to get there. So Actuator by BRIC, that is our, we'll call it a hybrid incubator accelerator program, because I think when you're rural, sometimes it's hard to really be focused and refine, especially in the early days with regards to what your programming is, because you need to be more expansive and inclusive and really just see who's out there for talent that would want to get involved in these types of activities. So we were planning to, as far as hiccups and hurdles, we were planning to last year be able to spin up our in-person incubator program and have everyone on campus with all the things I talked about earlier. And then when COVID hit, we decided to shift because we just needed to kind of assess where things were at. And we started working in earnest last summer. And that's something we collaborated with Molly on to really figure out, okay, how can we build a curriculum that can be hybrid? It'll start out virtual, but because the timelines on COVID have been so nebulous, we just needed to be prepared for any outcome and how we could best serve the populations we're trying to reach. So we launched Actuator in the fall as far as going out there and networking and trying to find companies that would be a good fit to participate. In earnest, we kicked it off in January. So we've close to having gone through 6 months of what is a 12-month program. And the way we have it set up, we have 3 months of weekly intensive topic-based theme conversations with industry experts on all the different things it takes to be a scalable tech company. Then we go into 3 months of more concerted mentorship and community networking. And then the last 6 months are supposed to be just helping to support these companies really execute on their model at a higher level. And so we're entering into that phase. And obviously we're going to be introducing Cara in a bit to talk about her experience and the impact we're making with that program. And we'll be looking to, at the end of this summer, take our learnings to improve the program, do what we're very excited about, do the in-person model, so the in real life in the September timeframe, as well as we're looking to launch a parallel accelerator program and potentially a third one. So we might actually be going into the fall running 3 different accelerator incubator programs through our campus, which it's honestly, for me, it's kind of mind-blowing at this point, how fortunate we are for all these good things to be happening. So talked about that. We also have a lot of technology programs, because when you're building something like this, it can't be singular and focus. Now, we've talked, when you're rural, you have to be broad-based. And so, just in the past year and a half, we've run programming through an organization called ROI, Flatiron, Workplace List, Udacity, CWEVT. We've spun up our own programming, partnerships with gaming companies like Endless. We actually partnered with another rural innovation community, Cape Girardeau, that has a youth coding league that is absolutely amazing. And we were the first community in the RIN network to launch their youth coding league program, and we had great success with it. In fact, knock on wood, our team started late in the season and they made it all the way to the semifinals of the playoffs because it's an actual league format. So we're pretty psyched that we've had that type of engagement and being able to work with, which we hope to do with Ada on other programming as well, this rural innovation network where we can share great ideas and borrow programming or syndicate things across the network. So, you know, now that I've given you all the pixie dust and unicorns and all the beautiful things of building a rural tech economy, you know, let's talk about the reality of the challenges. You know, it all sounds good, Trevor. Hey, this is great, but you know, what really happened? Well, it wasn't easy. I mean, we're kind of you're catching us at a good time. We're riding a wave of just having accomplished a lot of things that took years of effort. So we're looking at being at the tail end of essentially a 3.5-year project, of which we've only had 4 months of in-person physical execution time, and then the proverbial COVID time to just be like, okay, how the heck do we manage this thing and meet the narrative to the best of our capabilities with regards to our funding. So number one challenge, in my opinion, in rural culture, right? When you're doing something that has not existed before and you're working with a population that hasn't been educated to the benefits of what this is, you know, there's the shiny new things, as we call it, excitement of, hey, here's a new thing in town, it's great. But you know, rural people, myself included, tend to be very down to earth and very skeptical about big ideas because of the realities of rural capacity. So we spent a lot of time on the culture of creating the community connections, and we still continue to do that. It's one of our biggest priorities. So we started out with something that we call the digital collective. So the first thing we did is say, who out there, because we're a very hilly, mountainous state, and so people tend to be pretty isolated just because of our topography and geography. And we went out there and said, we need to identify anyone who is doing anything digital in their hills around us, because it just isn't done very well by us. So we were very fortunate to start making these connections with all of these people doing amazing digital things. I mean, we had retired executives from Fortune 500 companies who had come up to Vermont and they were doing new things. We have, you know, dare I say, we've got a couple billionaires in our universe around us that have beautiful homes out in the, you know, hills of Vermont that we've been able to make connections with that are helping us with resources. It's like, it's really amazing once you do that reach out, and then that's helped us to use that grassroots effect to then go out and reach out to their networks while we're simultaneously working with the community. So we're involved in the schools pretty heavily because, you know, this isn't a 1, 2, or 3-year plan you have to look at. These types of changes take a decade to 15 to 20 years to really institute the change. So we're trying to fill that proverbial pipeline using the business speak, right? Of making sure we get this culture instilled as something that people understand natively, so all the kids understand it because they're more digitally enabled. Whereas we have a population that trends over 55 is the majority. So people that maybe haven't had digital in their lifetime or even as a part of their day-to-day reality, you know, other than Netflix and now our Zoom reality because of COVID. So culture, you know, we really have been proactive about going out there, educating people, helping them. Like the programs are endless, and we can answer questions about that after if you have any questions. But, you know, the second part is the economics. So when you are dealing with scarcity and dealing in a depressed economy, you know, these things take money. And it's how do you make those relationships and continue to cultivate those relationships so that people stay vested in your programming. And so we've been very good about making sure that we're constantly out there trying to create new programming or find more people that we can get included in our programming, as well as continuing to communicate and curate relationships with people who have the financial capacity to support these types of programs, because we're a nonprofit. So we're a 501c3. You know, we're trying to make money. One of our models was off of the revenue from the campus of having the physical space, but obviously there was nothing there for the past year. And so we've done a lot of it through programming, is finding innovative digitally enabled programming where we can partner with funders to help support things that we know make impact. And that's why we're incredibly excited, because we survived the year by being very adept at pivoting to a digital only environment. But now we're looking back to, you know, perpetuating that digital environment and reintroducing our physical environment. So kind of third challenge of all of this is just being rural. So, you know, we talk about culture and money, and then you talk about being rural in a reality that I know all of us have faced, where, you know, the past couple decades, there's been a huge flight to urban areas by the, you know, you're looking at a 2-generation gap at this point that needs to be made up, where you had this brain drain of talent that was being cultivated through what were formerly very strong communities that has now gone elsewhere. So on top of building from scratch with regards to the resources in the community, the next part is making sure that, one, that doesn't happen again, and two, trying to see if we can recapture some of that talent, bring them back in, because we can show them a viable lifestyle with all of the modern capacity to do great things. And so I would say, if you look at those three things as being kind of your focus, and you just approach it iteratively, you're patient, you keep that grassroots model, and you also look to collaborate as opposed to competing, because I don't think rural can inherently compete unless you've got something amazingly unique. It has to be a collaborative approach to kind of lift all the boats with the rising tide. So on that note, I would love to connect with anyone. You know, you can hit us up on email or LinkedIn, because, like I said, it's about collaboration, connections. Happy to make intros, talk further offline from this scenario. But I guess I'll hand it over to Dia and Jim for any Q&A or questions from there.
Well, thank you so much, Trevor, for kicking this off. And I know we have time for a couple of questions, but I want to lead off with a question since we have you here. And something that was just burned in my brain, you know, hearing your presentation was, I think you might have buried the lead a little bit when you talked about the history of Springfield with the gear shaping industry. You know, in Ada, we didn't incorporate it as a city until the 20th century. And our first real big industry was cotton farming or cotton agriculture. So the idea of a gear shaping industry, you know, being a main industry of a town seems terribly exotic to us here in Oklahoma, right? So can you talk a little bit about, you know, how did that industry or economic history, you know, what happened to that industry and how did that contribute to the culture you guys have now? Because it seems like you guys are really having some success, but are there any lingering things you guys are dealing with, or did anything pop up along the way that has really shaped where you are now?
Yeah, well, first off, great question. Thanks, Jim. And having lived out west, right, it's strange to have grown up back east that has it's, you know, the heart of the modern American culture, we'll call it. So we have a little bit more history, but in general, what happened in Vermont, Vermont's always kind of an interesting culture, being independent. Like, it didn't join the original colonies to become a state. It stayed independent, kind of got pulled in at the end. So there's this, you know, this strong streak of self-help and independence here. The thing that happened is Vermont has an amazing abundance of natural resources. So a lot of the early days in Vermont were due to the fact that there used to be trees, you know, Vermont, literally the Green Mountains, all over the place. And then once upon a time, those all got cut down and became a part of driving, you know, commerce in the US with building things and farms and agriculture and all of those things, deep roots there. But then when hydropower got found out, I guess, as the industrial age kicked in the US. Springfield happened to be located on the Black River, so hence our name of Black River Innovation Campus, which had one of the most consistent flows, as well as the perfect kind of situation on the river where you could do hydropower. So almost all of the factory buildings in Springfield still have active hydropower underneath them. So it's kind of cool for a green energy play with some of these defunct factory buildings. But beyond that, we got really fortunate that there was, some original people in town. So the proverbial founding, and we'll say just because it was back then, it was the founding fathers. Unfortunately, there weren't a lot of women entrepreneurs that we know about back then that were part of building industry. And so what happened, which is a great analogy to tech economies, is you had a main company get started. You had Jones and Lamson, Fellows, Bryant, Lovejoy, these names that are familiar multi-generational names in the community, but it essentially started out with this guy, James Hartness. And James Hartness was just an inventor who started doing all this tooling and manufacturing, and then opened up a factory. And then people that interned or worked under him ended up figuring out their own innovations off of that industry, and they ended up creating the other major manufacturers. And James Hartness for Springfield is important because he also was the governor of Vermont at one point, built this amazing mansion that is has this underground telescope in it, like these just crazy resources, because they had a ton of money, they had incredible engineering expertise, and they built really nice things. It was all, we're called the Precision Valley. So that's a strong cultural thing for everyone here, is that everything was done with a quality that was globally renowned. And so that's kind of where things started. And so kept going, like I said, through the 70s and 80s, and then the global economy kicked in a different way, where cheaper labor and cheaper costs were found overseas. It was the first part of globalization, and so a lot of that stuff headed overseas from a manufacturing perspective, and that's where slowly but surely you saw the decline. And when we were growing up in this community, and I speak for myself selfishly, we were told to go elsewhere for your opportunity. It felt like that was it. Like the economy was in decline. You're going to need to go somewhere else to, make your proverbial fortune. As opposed to what we're doing now is like, well, why go somewhere else? Just invent something new, be innovative. Like, you have amazing capacity here, do great things here, retain that talent, retain that investment. Because as I mentioned, there's plenty of money in this area when it comes to financial capacity. It just does not get invested locally because there hasn't been a reason to for about 30 or 40 years. And so that's one advantage. If we can play on the old as new, play on that cultural benefit of, hey, this is a culture that was the basis for this community even existing. We're just trying to remake it with a modern twist that plays on, the new engineering model, which is the internet, as well as now that we know with the internet, we don't need to have a geographic centric model. You can do these things anywhere. And so let's play the lifestyle model. If you have a beautiful community with incredible assets, like I mentioned before with some of the pictures, we have a building that would not be built today. And frankly, it wouldn't be built anywhere with the skill and precision that it was built with. Like the fact that this thing it was a bomb shelter, during the Cold War. It was built that well. So it'll probably stand for another couple hundred years if we're able to, continue the maintenance and get this story off the ground.
Thank you, Trevor. I think, and I'm just going to step in because we are running a little short on time, and we have a wonderful presentation on the second half of the agenda as well. But Trevor, really appreciate the presentation. And if it's okay, I will share your contact information with everyone on the group.
Dia,
yes, ma'am.
Can I make one comment? For one thing, this was very inspirational or encouraging to me, because I see a lot of parallels between Ada and where you came from, because we have a lot of that. Why would you want to stay here? Go someplace else. I will tell you, our internet system Don't even get us started on that because y'all are literally 10 times ahead of us. But the connection between your gear industry and our cotton industry and your hydro industry and our wind industry here now that's growing, there are a lot of parallels there that I can look at and think, okay, don't tell us we can't do this in Ada. They did it in Vermont. So thank you.
Love it, Amy. Great comment. Okay, with that, I'm quickly going to introduce Cara. Cara, thanks so much for being with us today. She is the founder of Core for Parenting and is also a participant of the Actuator accelerator program that Trevor just talked about from BRIC. So with that, Cara, I will hand it over to you, and you should be able to share your screen. Also, a heads up, Cara mentioned to me that she would love questions after her presentation. So you all please be ready with questions for Cara.
Hi, everybody. It's great to see you all here. So my name is Cara Tyrrell, and just like a teeny bit of background about me, I grew up here. I was born in Springfield, Vermont. I grew up in a surrounding town about 7 miles south called Chester, Vermont. And my parents are lifetime educators. My mom taught her entire career here in Springfield. And my dad also taught here in Springfield, specifically in this building that we're in right now. He was a 3rd grade teacher in the basement. And I have kind of creepy memories actually about how dark his classroom was when I was a little girl, and thought, wow, you really bring it to life. This is amazing. So I went and I traveled and I got my education, and I ended up coming home to get married and to raise my kids back here, because as much as I saw of the world, this is an amazing place to grow up. And so I spent over 25 years in education thinking to myself, I have big things I really want to do, but I don't know that I'll ever get to do them because I'd have to leave here. I'd have to go somewhere urban. I'd have to live in a city. And those were not choices that I wanted to make. And because of BRIC, because of Corey, because of the world, the way the world is changing and people are connecting like we are from across the country right now, I now have the opportunity to do those big things. So I do have a hard stop at 11 o'clock. So I'm going to leave that as my introduction. And the only other thing I really want to say to you is, although I always knew I wanted to do something really special and touch a lot of lives, I am not inherently a tech person. I'm an educator, I'm a teacher, I'm a linguist, I'm fluent in American Sign Language, I can create curriculums, I do all those things. And so when Trevor and Chris reached out and said, hey, you know, there's this thing going on and we think that you could probably start a tech company. And I was like, what? I don't know about me in tech. This is weird. I don't do these things. And they said, why don't you go through the Actuator program, give it a shot and see what you think is possible. And I have to tell you that about 8 weeks into the 12-week curriculum, where we met with experts and we learned what the formatting looks like, and we learned how to build a really strong foundation for an online scalable tech company, I said, I'm all in. And I put in my notice at my job. Because I now know I can live rurally, I can have a backyard, and I can do this too and touch millions of lives. So that said, I'm going to do a pitch for you. I'm brand new to the pitching. This is my second time doing it. I didn't have a real logo when I started this program. Now I have a logo, thanks to the resources that an incubator program has provided. So what you're seeing is really a huge shift from where I started, which was I have an idea, I have a vision, I have a dream, and I have no idea if any of it's even possible. All right. So, hi, my name is Cara Tyrrell. I'm the founder of Core for Parenting, and I'm here to talk about early childhood education and setting our kids up for success in school and life. Science has proven 85% of foundational brain development in these 4 skill areas are complete by 5 years old. Interpersonal, physical, social, emotional, and cognition are the 4 skill areas that we have to found for these kids when they're young. Because 5 years old, put another way, is before they even start school. And statistics tell us that less than 50% of kindergartners are exhibiting readiness in these 4 skill areas when they start. We have a big problem. How did we get here? And more importantly, how are we going to solve this? The answer is we focus almost exclusively on that little red section, cognition. These are the faces of 85% brain development. These are our preschools and these are our kindergartners. And we are convinced that if they know their ABCs, 1, 2, 3's, colors, and numbers, they are ready learners and they will find success in school. It's just not true. And I can tell you that with confidence, with over 25 years as an early childhood educator. Think back just for a second to a typical day of kindergarten. What did you do all day? ABCs, 1, 2, 3's, colors, and numbers? No. You had to sit in a circle and control your body. You had to listen to the teacher's words and then follow the directions. You had to see the cool toy that kid over there had, but wait your turn. And more than anything, you had to process all your feelings and emotions all day long and still interact appropriately with everybody around you. This is social, emotional, interpersonal, and physical skills. These are the things that it's our job to foster in these kids from birth to 5 years old. So how do we do it? Core 4 has the solution. We have a dual core development model. We foster the who before the what. And this sets kids up for success. There's a connection between parent, caregiver, and child that allows kids to develop that early sense of self, which brings them to a place to learn these 4 core skill areas, which allows them to find comprehensive success in the classroom. And the indicators tell us this means success in life. We have a digital training course platform that is highly scalable. It follows the child's age and stage of development from birth until 5 years old. And what it means is it's really easy for the parents and caregivers to click into exactly where their child's at. We have a 1-button purchase to delivery model for our classes, which means they can start right away at home that day, creating a strong foundation. Think of us like Noom for parenting. We use the psychology and the science of human behavior to create a really positive parenting outcome. Oh, sorry about that. And parents are telling us it works. Our pilot program was attended well, and everyone had to fill out an intake assessment and then an exit assessment and do interviews with us. And in the beginning, they were all asked, what is the one thing you're most worried about or most scared of becoming a new parent? And without doubt, they all said some version of the same thing. Not having a clue what I'm supposed to do, and essentially messing my kid up without even trying. And upon exiting our coursework, they're saying they're confident and empowered and equipped. They have a toolbox of strategies and they feel secure, but more than anything, my favorite is that they're thriving in relationship with their children. The market is there and it's growing fast. Early childhood education is front of mind for everybody as we enter a post-pandemic teaching model. And so both parents and government grant monies are ready. They want to support world-ready kids. And when we look at the market landscape, we can clearly see a demand for this. We aim to occupy that space up in the top right corner, where we have proactive solutions in a highly scalable digital tech format for parents exclusively to tap into that. This entire system is built for them. There's no other type of coursework there. So we're really excited to use this dual market opportunity as it's presented to us right now in this time, because it allows us the most revenue and the most impact in the least amount of time. And so we feel like this is a really unique investment opportunity because People Planet Profit investors are special people. They understand that the desire is more than just a return in dollars. They understand that they're investing in human potential, and that human potential has an opportunity to snowball and create a better and better and better return over time. With my diverse background in education and my partner Lindsay's in science and in business, we are confident that we are the just right team to tackle this huge mission. And so as an early stage startup, we are looking to put together a seed round of $250,000. And we believe this will help us kind of runway through 12 to 18 months of some real basic building of a strong foundation and a strong MVP, land some of those really crucial early customers. But more importantly, we just really want to hear from you. We want to know what you might be interested in doing to be part of this journey, because world-ready kids really do change the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Cara. That was an awesome pitch. Can we get a quick round of applause for Cara, please?
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, we're going to jump right into Q&A. Feel free to unmute and shout out your question or put it in the chat. Keep your questions concise so we can get as many as possible.
Can I selfishly jump in real quick, Dia, and just say that seeing Cara present is like the greatest pleasure for me personally, because that is it right there. That's what we're doing. We're bringing opportunities to people who have the capacity, but maybe did not have the resources or the awareness that these things were possible. And so, yeah, it brings me to tears, literally.
Well, I find this to be the biggest blessing. I really do. It's like you put something out there and then you wait for it to fall into place, and it fell hard, and it's fast. That actually, I would say to you, if you are a budding entrepreneur and you feel like you really have a solution that meets a big need in the world, and you do something like this, be ready. Be ready for the speed. I don't think I was ready for it. Adapted, but I was shocked by how quickly this came to be.
So, hi, Cara. This is Mildred from Pine Bluff, Arkansas. I don't have a question. I just want to say congrats. Feeling a need that's so big and such a help to parents. My daughter is now 25, but I remember those very early years dealing with a very smart kid, very strong will, and not having this tool. And I wish I had this tool. I must say she's very successful. So I guess I did something right, even without the tool. I don't know. I don't take much of the credit for her, but I just want to say, I wish you all the success, because this is something that is so incredibly wonderful. And I'm glad that you're doing it in Springfield, Vermont, one of the states that is my favorite state in the nation. So thank you. Thank you for taking the leap into digital without knowing that you could. And thank you to BRIC for bringing you along. I think it's a great, this is a great success story as far as I'm concerned. And I know you'll do well.
And Mildred, you bring up a hugely important point, that in our focus during those formative developmental years of 0 to 5 on cognition, we do these kids a bit of a disservice. Right? Because we send them to that public school classroom, or any classroom for that matter, and then expect them to just kind of fill in those other gaps. But what happens is they end up spending so much of their time and energy trying to figure out how to sit in that circle and not wiggle. And so much energy trying to figure out how to talk to that friend without using their hands or yelling at them, that they're not comprehensively learning in every part of the classroom. And I'm really sad about that.
No, I think it's very important, because we were older parents. So for full disclosure here, and so we spent a great deal of time with our daughter, working on those 4 things,
Mhm.
so that when she went to K4 in a small little parochial school, she had the best K4 teacher ever, she was ready and she was able to really help others. Funny enough, at 4 years of age, help
Mhm.
others with all those 3 buckets that were perhaps missing with those kids, right? Leading by example, if you will. So I just think this is a great tool for parents, and I wish you all the success.
Thank you. Scott, it looked like you had something to say.
I did. I know we have a hard stop in 2 minutes. I think in an environment where you're actually in with investors raising money, I think one of the questions that would probably pop up would be, how are you planning on spending the $250,000?
Mhm.
So I assume you have an answer for that. Feel free to share now or take another question if there is one.
So my partner and I are definitely trying to drill down to a more real direct and readily available answer to that. But the generalized answer is that we really need to get the MVP out there. Right, we have a lot of parts, we have a lot of pieces. By the end of this week, we'll have kind of a housing space for it. We really need to bring on, whether it's via consulting or whether it's bringing on an actual person right out of the gate as our marketing and sales component to bring out our team, then you really need to get that set up, functional, and tested, and so that's the second part of the money, is we want to make sure that we can do a secondary pilot, and instead of a handful of rural families, we can bring it out and make it nationwide, really demographically diverse, so that we're seeing what the effect has, not just on families that have 2-parent households, not just on families where mom stays home, or not just on families who have kind of resources already. We really want to test this and iterate it in those early 12 to 18 months, to know that when we market it all the way, we're hitting the mark.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds great. I wish you the best of luck. That sounds
Thank
terrific. I've got to drop off, but thank you very much for sharing. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, and
Oh no, I was just gonna say, I know we're at the hour, but would you have time for one more question?
yeah, I can do one more.
Okay. I was curious, you mentioned that you didn't have a digital background or a tech background. So what was that journey like? What are the resources that helped you, or was it your partner to get to starting a tech-based startup?
Okay, so that circles completely back to BRIC, right? Doesn't it? Because so I don't have a tech background, but what I am is an incredibly adept and quick learner. And so as soon as I realized that I was going to end up, first of all, Trevor said that Vermonters tend to be very self-sustainable. I am the picture of that. I thought, I have to do this all by myself. I'm gonna have to learn every single component of running a business. Solopreneur, here I come. And as soon as I realized that I could build a team and I could focus really heavily on the things that I'm great at, and other people are really great at the things I'm not, I said, awesome, that's what I want to do. That end, in answering your question, Dia, I did, however, go through the digital challenge because I wanted some foundations. I wanted to know what I was talking about. I did take the digital marketing nano degree class through Udacity, because when I'm interacting with my marketing people, I want to know that I'm able to be part of that conversation without just saying, hey, can you sell this for me? So I found a little bit of a foundation for myself. I worked really hard to create some knowledge, and then I'm ready for other people who are innately gifted at it and also highly motivated to make an impact in the culture that our company is building, to come on board and do that. I told you this happened really fast for me, and I told you I gave you my notice. I gave you really long notice because I thought this was going to take a really long time. And that is why I've got to drop off, because I've got to get back to two little people who are waiting for me.
Well, we definitely appreciate it. And Cara, if it's okay with you, I will share your email with everyone if anybody has any other questions or feedback.
Please
Your
do.
presentation really was mind-blowing, very the attention capturing. So we wish you best of luck. And thank you so much for joining us today.
You are so welcome. I have a new email actually, so I'm just gonna put it in the chat.
Perfect.
So you guys have that. And then definitely look me up on LinkedIn. It's using my name.
Awesome. And
All right,
always,
thank you everybody. I so appreciate the opportunity to present. Have a wonderful day.
thank you, Cara. Appreciate it. All right, guys, I'm going to stop recording the call, but we will leave the call open. I know we had a great presentation earlier as well, and there's probably some questions. So if anyone can hang around, please feel free. If not, thank you everyone for joining, and we will be back again next month, second Wednesday. Thank you.
And yeah, as Dia's turning off recording, please feel free to just shoot out questions or whatever.